During the Great Depression, a real-life monster haunted the city of Cleveland, Ohio. A killer, as precise as a surgeon and as elusive as a ghost, unleashed a reign of terror that would scar the city for decades to come. Now, this isn't just another serial killer story. This is about the people society forgot, a legendary lawman pushed to his absolute limit, and a mystery that even today is finding its way back into the light.
Coldly efficient. That's how one of the lead detectives, Peter Merylo, described him. Between 1935 and 1938, this phantom stalked Cleveland's poorest neighborhoods, leaving behind a horrifying trail of dismembered bodies and the police force that was completely and utterly baffled.
So, to really understand this case, we have to start in the killer's personal hunting ground. See, these weren't just random acts of violence, this was a calculated campaign against people who were already invisible. Kingsbury Run. It wasn't just a place, it was a symbol of the Great Depression. It was this sprawling shanty town, what they called a hobo jungle, filled to the brim with people who had lost absolutely everything. They were drifters, the unemployed, people with nowhere else to turn. And their anonymity, well, that became the killer's most powerful weapon. Because when you're invisible to the world, who's gonna notice when you disappear?
Every single murder had the same terrifying signature. When I analyzed the coroner's reports, the consistency is just chilling. Decapitation was usually the cause of death, and it was done with a clean, confident stroke. The dismemberment that followed wasn't messy or frenzied. No, it was precise, clinical. It showed an incredible knowledge of human anatomy, which pointed to someone with medical training. This person was smart, organized, and felt absolutely no remorse.
But let's step back from the grisly details of the killer for a moment, because it's so important that we remember the human cost here. These weren't just clues in a case file. They were people with lives and stories.
10. You believe that? Of those 12 official victims, 10 of them are still unidentified. I mean, to be murdered in such a brutal way and then to be denied even your own name, that's just a heartbreaking injustice on top of everything else.
Edward Andrassy was one of the first victims found. His body was discovered back in September of 1935. He'd worked as a hospital orderly at one point, but like so many others, he was out of a job when he was killed. It was only because he had fingerprints on record that police were able to give him his name back.
And then there was Florence Polillo. She was found in pieces, packed into bushel baskets, in January 1936. She was a waitress, someone you'd see every day. Her fingerprints also led to an ID, giving investigators a second name, but honestly, it didn't get them any closer to finding the killer. It just made the whole city even more terrified. And that brings us to Rose Wallace. Her skeleton was found under a bridge a full year after she went missing. Her identification was only tentative, based on dental records from a dentist who had actually passed away. That uncertainty really shows you just how incredibly hard this investigation was, and how this tragic anonymity just blanketed almost all of the victims.
Okay, so the city is in a full-blown panic. The body count is rising. So Cleveland's mayor turns to his brand new high-profile safety director, the very same man who had just taken down Al Capone in Chicago. He called in Eliot Ness.
Ness's hunt for the butcher, it really showed two completely different sides of the man. On the one hand, he was this brilliant reformer, modernizing a totally corrupt police force. But on the other hand, the pressure to catch this monster, it pushed him to some really extreme measures. Wait, hold on. He ordered the burning of the shantytowns? Yes, in a move that was, and still is, incredibly controversial. He had the entire settlement torched. The official story was that he wanted to take away the killer's hunting ground. But what he actually did was displace hundreds of homeless, desperate people, essentially arresting them for the crime of having nowhere else to go.
So even with this massive manhunt, the investigation was hitting dead end after dead end. But slowly, over time, the police and Eliot Ness himself started to zero in on two main suspects.
All right, first up was a man named Frank Dolezal. He was arrested by the county sheriff and actually confessed to killing Florence Polillo, who he had lived with. But then he immediately took it back, saying the confession was literally beaten out of him. He never even made it to trial. Hold on, his death was ruled a suicide, but he had 6 broken ribs? Exactly. The official cause was hanging, but that autopsy finding, the ribs were broken while he was in custody. It makes a lot of people think he was not only innocent, but murdered. Then you have Dr. Francis Sweeney. He was a surgeon, an alcoholic one with a history of mental illness, but he had the exact anatomical knowledge needed for these crimes. Oh, and he also just happened to be the first cousin of a very powerful US congressman, which made things complicated.
Ness was so sure it was Sweeney that he secretly brought in Leonard Keeler, the guy who invented the polygraph machine, to test him. Sweeney failed. Twice. According to people who were there, Keeler's conclusion was absolute. He was positive that Sweeney was the killer.
Okay, so that's the big question, right? If Ness had his man, and the polygraph expert basically confirmed it, why on earth did the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run get away with it?
Well, the answer is just this frustrating mess of politics, power, and a simple lack of hard evidence. See, Ness knew that a case built on a failed lie detector test and circumstantial evidence wasn't going to hold up in court, especially not against a guy with powerful connections. Sweeney's congressman cousin gave him a political shield that poor Frank Dolezal never stood a chance of having.
And just like that, the murder stopped. The last two victims were found almost as a final taunt to Ness, in plain sight of his office window. After that, nothing. The trail went cold. Sweeney checked himself into a psychiatric institution, but get this, he kept tormenting Ness for years, sending him these strange, harassing postcards. With Sweeney locked away and Dolezal dead, the case just faded. It went from a terrifying manhunt to a dark piece of Cleveland folklore. Well, until now.
And this is where the story takes this incredible modern turn. In August 2024, almost 90 years later, the DNA Doe Project started exhuming the unidentified victims. Using genetic genealogy, there's now a very real possibility of finally giving these nameless people their identities back. It's really this powerful reminder that even though the killer was never caught, the fight for the victim's dignity never really stopped.
Giving the victims their names is absolutely the most important step. But it does leave us with one last massive question. With all these new scientific tools, could we finally find the evidence that Eliot Ness never could and solve one of America's most chilling cold cases for good?
We'll have to wait and see, but it's clear the pursuit of justice never really has an expiration date. If you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did, let us know by hitting that like button, and make sure you subscribe for more explainers that break down these complex and compelling stories. Thanks for watching.